Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I'm going to talk to you about whether you should get student loans during your doctoral program. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor for it and help you out. So I apologize in this video. I have a bit of a man cold. I'm struggling with it. So I'm going to sound a little bit wheezy throughout it. So should you actually get doctoral student loans during your PhD? I'm going to be honest with this. I'm going to tell you right up front that you should seek to try to get student loans as much as you possibly can, and look for ways and all different sort of alternatives to not go into debt during your PhD program. So in my undergrad, I was able and fortunate enough to not have any student loans. I had a number of different scholarships. And as well as I worked, it was a co-op program, and then my master's was able to fund most of it through scholarships. And you'll find that most people that go into a PhD, I think that's pretty normal for a lot of people to have different scholarships and stuff like that, because to get into a PhD program, you have to have a pretty good GPA or a good, your grades have to be pretty good in order to get into a PhD program. So most people have paid their undergrad and master's degree in various different ways. So not a lot of people will have student loans when they go into their PhD program. Some people do if they've done an MBA program, for example. So I'm in a business school, lots of people do MBA programs. Those are really expensive for the most part. I didn't do an MBA, I did a Master's of Applied Science. But what you'll realize is that the PhD, it is a very long journey. If anybody tells you that it's a short journey or it's easy, they're just flat out lying to you in any sort of way. So expect your PhD program for most people. So I've only met a couple of people in my life that have done a PhD in 3 years and is actually research active and is a professor someplace. Most people will end up doing their a quarter of them will do their PhD in 4.5 years. Most people will do them somewhere between 4.5 and 5, and then a small number of people will take 6 and 7. And it's not because they're not smart, it's just that they are working on something that just takes a lot of time. But so what you'd have to expect with a PhD program, and most programs will only fund about 4 years. Historically, it was about 4 years, because that's when federal funding and state funding and whatever country you're in, funding kind of runs out. Is usually around 3 or 4 years. Or if you're working in a lab that is funded by somebody else, they'll give you funding for 3 to 4 years through their research grant, and then it's done after that, and you have to sort of figure out a way to sort of manage your life. So at about 4 years in most programs, now it's getting a little longer, so sometimes some programs will have 5 years of funding, or they look for 5 years of funding. So after a certain number of years, your funding just runs out, and you have to find ways to find money. And so lots of people will turn to student loans. So for me, my funding ran out in year 4. I apologize for the alarm that's going off in the background. So in year 4, my funding ran out, and I had to look for alternative funds. And so it was a really stressful time for me to find these alternative funds in various different ways. I ended up not getting alternative funds for a year, and then finding somebody that was willing to give me a postdoc, and that was really nice. And so what I did live off of, my wife was working at the time, thankfully, but at the same time, we were still, we had kids, all these different commitments and stuff like that. So it's still, we were not doing this very well, and I had to take out some student loans, which was really, really stressful. So the reason why it was stressful is that it was another thing that I had to worry about and that I had to pay back, and knowing that I had to pay that back really got to me, and it really, really, it really added to a lot of anxiety, a lot of feelings of depression, all sorts of things that were just negative feelings that you don't necessarily need with this. So if I was to do this again, and looking back to do this again, this is what I'd recommend for you to do. So first of all, I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. Check him out and follow along with him. I love the stuff that he does. So really do look at what he does. Some of his advice is not as good for PhDs and doctoral programs though, because of this long period where you're trying to, you have to commit to working full time at the PhD in order to complete and do a good job. And at the same time, it's a long period. So what I would do as much as you can is before you get into a doctoral program, look to see if you can save a significant sum of money. Maybe it is $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 that you can save up to allow you to get through the program and have a lump sum that's going to allow you to rely on it at points where you're not going to have funding or it's going to run out. Another thing that I would highly recommend for you to do before you actually get into the PhD program is get used to living on a budget and really living very modestly. So that's where I could have lived a little bit more modestly, or we could have, by living in, so we lived in a city where it was cost effective enough to buy a house. And we did do that, but we could have bought a much smaller house. We bought one that was kind of like an average house in the community, but we could have bought something that was really small to sort of fit the budget a little bit better. And what we were doing and what we were estimating where we went wrong is that we were estimating that we were going to have the money all the way through and I was going to get out in 4 years. But when I started the program, I realized, most people, and they were highly encouraging you to take 5 years. And it turned out it took me 7 years by the time I actually got done. So I want you to err on the side of being very, very cautious and estimate that you will run out of money for whatever reason. All sorts of crazy stuff happens at about your 3rd year. And I'm just asking you to be conservative with your money and realize, how are you going to live? Figure out ways that you're going to live without any of those PhD stipends coming in so you can survive and not be stressed out. So the more that you can reduce your lifestyle going in, the better off it's going to be. And so actually this very thing happened to us when we moved to the United States. I'm Canadian, moved to the United States. The bank wouldn't give us, because we didn't have any credit scores, the bank wouldn't give us, a large mortgage. And that turned out to be a complete blessing, because we have a much smaller house than what a lot of people have. It's a decent house, we love it, it's perfect. But a lot of people would get a larger house when they have 2 incomes, right? But for us, we ended up having to live off of 1 income, because that was the only thing that was guaranteed at the time, was my income that was coming in. My wife wasn't working. And so we live off of, now going forward, since then, we've lived off of 1 income. And it's been wonderful for us. So look for ways that you can do that and live off of 1 income, or just reduce your lifestyle in such a way that it is possible that, if all hell breaks loose, and hell will break loose when you're doing a PhD, I guarantee it, that you can live off of whatever it is without having that PhD stipend coming in, or looking for ways that you can live off that PhD stipend coming in. Now, some people will get side hustles or side jobs, like, writing for other people, doing editing jobs and stuff. The problem with those, or teaching is a really popular one, where you teach for a little bit. The problem is you're doing what is called an exploration-exploitation trade-off. What you're doing is the immediate returns are giving you funds to sort of fund what you're doing right now, but it's taking away from the long term of you being able to complete this PhD or do research that will get you publications and allow you to do well in the long run. So try not to do those as much as you can. I know it's going to be very, very tempting during the PhD program for you to actually go out and teach as many courses as you can, or do a bunch of side gigs and stuff. Focus on the research, because you're actually going to gain better gains from that in the future. Your investment in yourself, investment in your research, has far better gains in terms of the returns in the future. As soon as you start working and as soon as you get that job, you can pay back a lot of this kind of stuff. So try to avoid that. So my message with this video is avoid getting the student loans and look for ways in your life that you can reduce your life. So that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to point out, so there's one other thing I wanted to point out. Look for PhD programs that are going to be supportive financially as much as much as possible, right? So those are going to be golden for you in order to navigate this. There's huge differences in what you actually get at PhD programs around the world in terms of their stipends. Really look into that, and I'm not going to sway you in any sort of way, but really look into the different programs that are out there. Look at the different degrees. Sometimes you're going to be studying the exact same thing in one degree, and it's going to be called, you might be studying in anthropology, for example. The same stuff that you study in anthropology might be studied in law. You just call it different things. So just look for those particular moments where you can study something that you really want to study, but look for programs that are going to pay you much more. They have stipends much more. And then the other thing to worry about is not only the program, right, the immediate short term, but also really look at what the outcome is, how much money you're actually going to make in the outcome once you're actually done. There's huge variances in programs, and I cannot stress that more. Even private schools, a lot of private schools, some of them actually, they do really well in terms of PhD stipends. So look at those. Look at public schools. They typically do pretty well in terms of their stipends. And just really look broadly and look at different programs, look at different labs, for example, and see what they have available. Really do a lot of search up front. It's going to be worth your time to spend the year, so postpone your PhD program and spend a year searching for a really good lab or a really good program that is going to be supportive financially as well as mentally, morally. It's going to be well worth your time and effort to do this than just jumping into a program very quickly that just seems like it's immediate and available. So that's what I would highly recommend in terms of student loans. Avoid getting them as much as you can. They're going to cause you a significant amount of stress going forward if you do get them. And if you do get them, really try to avoid using it. Do not go there in terms of using it for different things, right? Don't get a car off of it. Really look for ways that you can push this back, and don't use it in any sort of way, because it's just going to cause you a significant amount of stress and anxiety as you go into the program and you develop as a scholar. And it's not going to be until you're on the other side that you are going to, you're going to be able to pay this off. And that's a long time away. It's going to give you a lot of stress, and it's going to make you do decisions that you probably wouldn't have done without those student loans. So look at that as much as you can. Invest in pushing it back as much as you can, and just take your time with the decision making and really think it through. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the whole reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. I'm trying to create the sharing economy editing platform. It's a work in progress, continuing to invest in it. So just check it out. Anyways, thanks again. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.